Last June 30, 2026, Mercury began its retrograde journey through Cancer. And apparently, Mercury retrograde in Cancer did not arrive merely to ask whether I had a backup files. No, it did not actually ask me that. It came to basically review the emotional narrative I've been carrying, especially the ones dressed as wisdom, the ones that sounded spiritual, the ones that told me to trust the process, surrender control, remain patient, focus on abundance, and believe that everything was unfolding exactly as it should. Beautiful words, comforting words. But what happens when those words are placed beside an actual reality? What happens when rent is due, when electricity and internet needs to be paid, when debt is growing, when children needed food, milk, safety, stability, when the body is exhausted, when the support is absent, when the numbers simply do not actually work? And what point does positivity does become encouragement and started become denial? At what point does trust the universe becomes an excuse to avoid making a difficult but necessary decision? And at what point does blaming someone's scarcity mindset becomes a way of refusing to acknowledge that 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 they may be experiencing actual scarcity? Because those are not the same thing. A scarcity mindset is an internal belief that there will never be enough even when resources, support, and reasonable options are available. An actual scarcity is when there is genuinely is not enough income, food, housing, security, healthcare, childcare, time, energy, or practical support to meet a person's need. One is actually a psychological pattern and the other one is a material condition. And when we refuse the two, or we are actually confusing the two, spirituality becomes dangerous. A person's a person who is actually calculating the rent, electricity, food, debt, transportation, and childcare is not automatically vibrating in scarcity. Sometimes they are simply reading the dashboard correctly. Sometimes the warning light is actually on. Sometimes the fuel really is running out. Sometimes the bridge between or ahead really is actually broken. And telling that person to stop focusing on the problem does not repair the bridge. It only asks them to close their eyes while driving towards it. Modern spirituality often tells us, stop focusing on the bills. You attract what you fear. Your doubt is blocking your blessing. You must feel abundant before abundance arrives. Everything will always work out for you. But what happens when everything is not working out right now? What if somebody's reality is genuinely painful, unstable, or unsustainable? Must they lie about it to remain spiritual? Must they call the suffering a blessing? Must they call abandonment as independence? Must they call exhaustion alignment? Must they call financial danger a mindset problem? No, because spirituality without grounding can become denial with incense. And positivity without honesty can become another form of abandonment. There is a healthier middle. Like I can acknowledge what is materially true without allowing it to define what is permanently possible. I can recognize that my current financial situation is serious without believing I will remain here forever. I can trust that another path may open while still preparing to plan B or plan B. I can have faith and still read the contract. I can believe in my mission and still protect the body carrying it. I can remain hopeful without pretending that everything is positively dandy when clearly it is not. That is not victimhood. That is not low vibration. That is not scarcity consciousness. That is discernment with calculator. And perhaps that is Mercury retrograde in Cancer opening this conversation. Cancer brings the discussion back to the actual body itself, to home, to safety, to nourishment, to children, emotional truth, to the difference between feeling spirituality inspired or spiritually inspired and being materially supported. This retrograde does not ask only, what do you believe? It also asks, does that belief help the human being living inside you actually live? That does your spirituality make you more honest, more compassionate, more responsible, more capable of recognizing suffering and responding to it? Or does it just teach you to smile at over the warning sign and call that fate? People might ask, why am I roasting the universe? Don't you have trust? Don't you have faith? Yes, I have a lot. I do have trust. I do have faith. But also I need to be embodied enough, grounded enough, and realistic enough to admit when my actual life is suffering. I cannot call everything divine timing while my bills are rising. I cannot say everything is unfolding perfectly while my body is exhausted, my children need security, and my material reality is actually asking for action. I cannot ignore what is happening in front of me just to protect a spiritual belief from being questioned. My moral compass refused that. My inner knowing refused that. My higher self refused that. My body refuses that. Even my ego refuses that. Because not every protest from the ego is fear. The ego is always the first protector. Sometimes the ego is saying, this is not safe. This is not sustainable. This is not fair. This needs to change. And I cannot become delusional and keep saying everything is wonderful when it clearly is not. That is not faith. That is denial. That is false positivity. That is spirituality being used to escape reality instead of helping a human being live through it. My whole biology refused to become a passive victim of circumstances. And that is a difference. Scarcity consciousness can make a person believe that they are powerless, that nothing will ever change, that there is no point in moving. But complaining while still walking is not scarcity. Questioning while still building is not scarcity. Being angry while still carrying your responsibility is not scarcity. Looking at the mat, recognizing that this does not really work, and searching for another route is not scarcity itself. That is maturity, that is agency, that is discernment, that is refusing to surrender your power just because the current situation is difficult. There is a difference between saying, nothing will ever work, so I will do nothing, and saying, this is not working, so I need to find another way. first one abandons agency. The second one exercise agency. Recognizing the material problem is not the same as surrendering to it. Naming suffering does not create suffering. Reading a bill does not attract an actual bill. Acknowledging that something is unsustainable does not make someone negative. Sometimes honesty is the first responsible act. Sometimes the complaint is not evidence that someone has stopped walking. Sometimes the complaint is coming from the person who has to continue walking long after everyone else stopped helping them carry the actual weight. And that is why not everything presented as spirituality is automatically healthy, grounded, or true. Sometimes spirituality is beautiful. Sometimes it gives you strength, meaning, hope, a deeper understanding of our lives. Sometimes it helps us survive experiences that will otherwise feel unbearable. But spirituality can also become dangerous when it tells people to ignore the pain, overlook injustice, romanticize deprivation, and blame themselves for material suffering. Not everything difficult is a lesson. Not every delay is a divine protection. Not every loss is redirection. Not every closed door is secretly a blessing. Not every unmet need is caused by a low vibration. Not every lack of support means that someone has failed to receive. Sometimes support really is just absent. Sometimes resources is really insufficient. Sometimes the system really is unfair. Sometimes the people who should be contributing are simply not contributing at all. Sometimes the body is just simply exhausted. And acknowledging those truths does not make someone spiritually weak. It makes them honest. It makes them embodied. It makes them capable of responding to what is actually happening rather than what they have been told they should pretend is happening. I roast the universe because I'm still in conversation with it. I complain because I still care about the path. I question because I refuse to surrender my discernment. I continue walking because I have not abandoned the mission. But I will not pretend that the road is painless just to sound enlightened. I will not protect an idealized version of spirituality at the expense of the human being living through the experience. I will not cause suffering abundance. I will not abandon independence. Or I will not call abandonment as independence. I will not call exhaustion as alignment. I will not call neglect a lesson in self-reliance. I will not call financial danger as a mindset problem. I will not call symbolic promises material support. I will not treat dreams as completed communication. I will not treat signs as contracts. I will not treat synchronicities as payment. I will not treat potential as proof. And I will not sacrifice the human carrying the mission just to preserve the belief that everything must always be unfolding perfectly. Because if the mission destroys the body carrying it, then something about the way the mission is being lived must change. Because the body is not disposable, the human is not collateral, the children are not background characters in somebody else's spiritual lesson. The bills are not illusions. The need for safety is not a failure of faith. Creating a plan B is not abandoning the path. Choosing employment while building the business not to actual surrender. Looking for childcare is not low vibration. Repairing the tools needed to earn is not material attachment. Protecting the houses is not fear. It is responsibility. It is embodiment. It is love translated into action. I whole biology refuses to be the victim. But refusing victimhood does not mean pretending that nothing actually hurts. It means I can acknowledge the difficulty without allowing it to take away my ability to act. I can complain and still move. I can question and still build. I can feel angry and still make responsible choices or decisions. I can challenge the universe and still believe that life holds possibility I cannot yet see. I can prepare for employment while remaining committed to my work, to my purpose, to the one that I am building. I can create stability while protecting the actual path. That is not scarcity. That is maturity. That is agency. That is spirituality with a backbone. I have faith. But my faith has eyes. My faith has boundaries. My faith has a moral compass. My faith can read the bill. My faith can calculate the cost of transportation. My faith can recognize when the available income does not cover the actual expenses. My faith can identify danger. My faith can create plan B. My faith can revise the system. My faith can admit that the current route is not sustainable and still believe that something better is actually possible. My faith does not require me to become delusional. It does not require me to call everything beautiful when it is not. It does not require me to silence my body, my ego, my inner knowing, my moral compass. It does not require me to abandon reality in order to feel that I trust the unseen. Real faith just should be able to survive an honest question itself. Real spirituality should be able to face an unpaid bill. Real hope should be strong enough to look directly at suffering without denying it. And real abundance should not require people to pretend they are already safe while they are actively struggling to survive. So yes, I rose the universe. Not because I have no faith. I rose the universe because my faith refuses to become blind obedience. I rose the universe because I remain in relationship with the path, but I will no longer accept symbolic reassurance as substitute for material reality. I rose the universe because spirituality needs accountability too. Because when a promise claims to have arrived, I need to see the delivery. When support claims to be present, I need to see how it supports the human. When a manifestation claims to be complete, I need to see the 3D receipt. Until then, I can remain open. I can remain hopeful. I can remain peaceful, but I will also remain honest. That is not scarcity. That is faith with discernment. That is hope with eyes open. That is spirituality that refuses to abandon the actual reality. And then, the universe asked me to release control. How ironically comedic. Release control. Talaga ba? How? What exactly am I supposed to release? The rent? The electricity? The internet? The food? The milk? The safety of my kids? Am I supposed to release control and simply trust that my family will not go hungry? Am I supposed to surrender while the bills remain unpaid? Because that is not spiritual surrender. That is neglecting material reality. When the main objective is survival, trying to keep the household functioning should not automatically be labeled as control. There is difference between controlling an outcome and responding to the immediate need. Trying to dictate exactly how, when, how, when, and through whom something must happen may be controlled, but making sure there is food on the table is not actually controlled. Paying the rent is not controlled. Protecting the children is not controlled. Finding employment when the business is not yet producing income is not controlled. Creating a backup plan is not controlled. Recognizing that the numbers do not work and taking action is not controlled. That is survival. That is responsibility. And that is a human nervous system responding to real danger. A person who has not been given a genuine break from survival mode will naturally hold tightly to the ordinary structure that keeps life functioning. They will calculate, they will prepare, they will anticipate danger, they will search for another source of income, they will try to keep the lights on, not because they are obsessed with controlling the universe itself, but because the reality has repeatedly taught them that if they do not hold certain things together, those things may actually fall apart. You cannot keep a person in continuous survival mode and then criticize them for holding on. You cannot deny them reliable support and then tell them that their vigilance is blocking the abundance. You cannot leave them carrying the practical weight of the household and then call their sense of responsibility as a spiritual wound that must be released. Those are stupid. I'm sorry. I need to say it. Those are really stupid. Release requires safety. Surrender requires support. Receiving requires something real to receive. Rest requires knowing that essential needs will still be met when the body finally stops moving. Without those actual conditions, telling someone to release control can become another form of spiritual bypassing. It can become a way of asking a struggling person to stop responding to danger so that everyone else can continue calling the situation divine timing. But the body knows the difference. The body knows when the threat is symbolic and when it is material. The body knows when fear comes from the old memory and when the electricity, reality, or really is about to be disconnected. The body knows when someone is attempting to control an imagined future and when someone is trying to secure the next meal. Not every act of holding on comes from fear. Sometimes it comes from love. It comes from responsibility. It comes from knowing that other human beings depend on you. Sometimes it comes from a body that understands that it cannot continue carrying a mission without food, shelter, sleep, medical care, a sustainable source of income. The vessel itself is not separate from the mission. The human being is not disposable equipment. The body is not an inconvenient obstacle standing between the soul and its purpose. The body is the only place where the human experience can actually happen and live. If the body is pushed beyond its capacity, there's no spiritual achievement in that. There is no mission without the person living it. There's no work without the hands creating it. There's no voice without the lungs, the throat, the nervous system, and body carrying it. There's no path if the person walking it is repeatedly denied the condition needed to remain alive and functional. So no, I will not call every survival response an attachment to control. I will examine where I am attempting to force outcomes that are not mine to command. I will release the need to know every detail of the future. I will release the belief that I must personally manage the choices of other adults. I will release the idea that every unfinished task is a moral failure. I will release perfection. I will release imaginary deadlines. I will release responsibility for what is generally outside my jurisdiction, but I will not release my duty to protect my children. I will not release the need to pay for shelter, food, utilities, healthcare, and the tools required to earn. I will not surrender my discernment. I will not silence the warning system of my body simply because someone has called them fear. I will not abandon my mundane survival in order to perform spiritual trust. Because survival is not the opposite of spirituality. The mundane is not beneath the sacred. Paying the rent can be sacred. Feeding the children can be sacred. Repairing the computer that allows me to earn can be sacred. Applying for a job can be sacred. Creating a plan B can be sacred. Protecting the vessel is sacred. You know, the healthiest question is not, why can't you release control? The healthiest question is, or are, what are you actually trying to keep safe? What support would allow you to loosen your grip? Which responsibility truly belongs to you? Which burden were placed on you because no one else was willing or able to carry them? And can, or how can surrender become safe enough to be practiced? Because a person cannot be ordered out of survival mode. To be honest, they must be given enough safety to live it. A nervous system does not release its grip because someone repeated an affirmation. It can release when danger has genuinely decreased. It can release when support becomes consistent. It can release when food is available. It can release when shelter is secure. It can release when the bills are paid. It can release when there's another dependable human being in the room. It can be released when the rest no longer threatens the survival of the household. Until then, holding on to the structure that keeps a family alive is not a spiritual defect. It is an intelligent response to reality. You know, I can release control over the final outcome, but I will not release my participation in survival. I can surrender the fantasy that I must know exactly how the path unfolds, but I will still act when the path beneath my feet is collapsing. I can trust the larger journey, but I will also protect the human being required to complete it. That is not resistance. That is embodiment. That is not scarcity. That is responsibility with discernment. That is surrender. That does not abandon a human. Let me be clear about this one. I'm not saying that I am abandoning everything. This rant are not evidences that I have abandoned my path. They are evidences that I refuse to abandon myself inside the actual path. There are evidences of my rebellion against the belief that spiritual people must suffer in order to prove that they are spiritual. I reject the idea that pain automatically makes someone pure. I reject the idea that deprivation makes someone more aligned. I reject the idea that being unsupported is sacred initiation that must be endured without complaint. I reject the idea that exhaustion is not proof of devotion. I reject the idea that more a person sacrifices, the more worthy they become. I reject the belief that the martyrdom is the highest expression of love. Being martyr has never been part of my biology. Being a passive victim has never been part of my biology. Silencing myself while something harms me has never been part of my biology. I might be grieving. I might be becoming exhausted. I may be becoming angry. I may be questioning everything. I may sit down on the floor and ask the universe, what kind of cosmic joke it thinks it is delivering? But eventually I will stand. I will look at the system. I will identify what is failing. I will build another route. I will find another source of income. I will repair the tools. I will protect the children. I will preserve the work. I will contain the mission without allowing the mission to consume the human carrying it. That is who I am. I will always stand as sovereign. Sovereignty does not mean that I control everything. It means I remain responsible for my choices. It means I do not surrender my discernment to someone else's spiritual interpretation. It means no teacher, astrologer, reader, doctrine, manifestation practice, or invisible promise gets to overrule what my body, reality, are clearly communicating. It means I can listen to guidance without abandoning judgment. It means I can trust the path without worshipping hardship. It means I can believe in timing without waiting until my life collapses. It means I can remain spiritually open without becoming materially irresponsible. It means I can say, no, this is no longer acceptable. It means I can say, this lesson has reached its limit. It means I can say, I understand what you are asking me to learn, but I refuse to destroy or to be destroyed by this method. I refuse hardship that exists only to shrink me. I refuse suffering that demands I become smaller, quieter, weaker, or easier to be controlled. I refuse spiritual narratives that turn survival into shame. I refuse teaching that describes self-protection as fear. I refuse interpretation that calls exhaustion resistance. I refuse system that demands the sacrifice of a human while praising the mission. Hardship may shape me. It might clarify me. It may reveal what matters. It may expose the structure that need to change. But hardship does not own me. It does not get to define the limits of my future. It does not get to convince me that suffering is the only available path to wisdom. I'm not here to become smaller. I'm not here to despair inside the responsibility. I'm not here to prove how much pain I can tolerate. I'm not here to become beautifully spiritual tragedy or a beautiful spiritual tragedy. I'm here to live. I'm here to create. I'm here to protect. I'm here to build. I'm here to experience the path through an actual human life. An actual human experience. That life deserves food, that deserves shelter, that deserves rest, that deserves support, that deserves comfort, that deserves laughter, that deserves compensation, that deserves moments when the body is not preparing for the next emergency, that deserves to receive without first being pushed to the edge of collapse. So no, universe. My complaint is not surrender. My anger is not abandonment. My plan B is not betrayal. My decision to survive is not evidence that I have lost faith. This is my rebellion against the belief that spirituality requires suffering. This is my refusal to romanticize deprivation. This is my refusal to become a victim while calling it divine timing. This is my refusal to offer my body as collateral for a mission that supposedly values life. Don't get me wrong, I still believe in the path. I still carry the work. I still protect the vision. But I will not abandon the human in order to complete it. I will remain open. I will remain discerning. I will remain embodied. I will remain responsible and I will remain sovereign, not because nothing can hurt me, but because I control, not because I control every outcome, but because hardship will not be allowed to strip me of my voice, my agency, my dignity, or my right to choose another way. I will not abandon the mission. I am refusing to disappear inside of it. I am refusing to disappear inside of it.